I am back from pronghorn camp and I've got a few things to say about that. What's going on, guys? My name is Josh Kirchner. Welcome to the Dialed In Hunter YouTube channel and thanks for tuning into the video. Like I said in the intro, I just got back from my very first pronghorn hunt ever. It was an archery tag, out-of-state hunt. I was joined by my good buddy Curtis Brooks for a couple days of that. We had an awesome time, lots of laughs, great food, and in total I had about 8 days to try to put an arrow in a pronghorn. I got to camp late at night, got camp all set up, and I've never stepped foot in this area ever. My plan for the first morning was I e-scouted with Curtis some trails that were leading to a water source, pretty beat down trails from what I could see on Onyx. And so my play the very first morning was I was going to hike into this area in the dark, get the blind all set up, and just play the waiting game. You know, I actually really like ambush hunting. I like sitting in a blind. I like sitting in a tree. It's exciting to me. Some people can't do it, but like I actually really enjoy it. That's kind of how my dad brought me up hunting. So sitting there and like seeing something come in, I absolutely come unglued. It's super exciting to me. So that's what I did. I hiked in, got the blind set, and in probably an hour and a half, 2 hours, all of a sudden I had 2 does and a fawn pronghorn come running and stop dead looking right at the blind. And right when I saw that, I was like, oh man, it's over. You know, the gig is up. But after looking at me for about a minute or so, they just walked right in front of me. I had them at 17 yards. My tag's only good for a buck, but it was super cool to see. They went and got a drink, came back, and they caught me. I was trying to film them with my camera through the window of the blind, and they caught that movement, I'm pretty sure, and then they skedaddled out of there. So that was my very first morning ever pronghorn hunting. I hiked into this area totally blind, set up my blind, sat there, and just kind of saw what the area looked like from the blind for the very first time. So it was really cool. After that, I got out of there, sat there for you know, till like midday or so, and then I got out of there and wanted to go kind of drive around and see what this place looked like. And after doing so, I ended up spotting 2 bucks, I think it was, not too far off of the road. They're out in this big sage flat. And I'm looking at them, I'm like, how am I going to do this, you know? But this is what, you know, this is what you signed up for, you know, spot and stalking in this flat stuff with very little cover. So I was like, okay. So I went after it, and I ended up getting to, I got to like 96 yards or so. And then the bucks, they didn't see me. They just kind of got up to feed, and they kind of fed away. At least I don't think they saw me, right? Like that, their eyesight's crazy. But they started feeding away, and then they bed down again, like 20 yards past that point. So I ended up getting to 114, and then they got up and saw me. Okay, and this was like the first kind of aha moment for pronghorn with me. I thought the gig was up, and they just looked at me. They just like stared at me, and eventually they kept coming closer and closer and closer. And those bucks ended up cutting 20 yards on me, and it looked like they were going to keep coming. So I was kind of fiddling with my bow, getting ready to take like a longer shot, 80-yard shot or so, 85-yard shot. And they kind of saw that, you know, and then like 15 others stood up that I had no idea were there. It was awesome. And then they were all alerted and kind of trotted out of there. So this was my first day pronghorn hunting ever. And I was like, oh my gosh, I have 7 more days of this. This is going to be so awesome. Curtis met me later that night, and it was really nice to see him and kind of, you know, catch up and eat some great food and stuff like that. What's the plan, buddy?
It's the same as always. Find antelope, kill antelope, eat antelope. But I don't know if that's might be easier said than done. I don't know.
We would hit the blind the first part of the day, and then we would either, move around and kind of still hunt through this area that was kind of thick with willows and stuff, so you could kind of work your way through without being seen. Or we would go drive around and just look for pronghorn off the side of the road, which was proved to be, the further the trip went on, to me it proved to be the most effective way, honestly, to locate pronghorn. I'm someone, if you followed my channel for any amount of time, I think you've caught on to the fact that I tend to hunt away from roads. I really try to get away from that stuff. But with pronghorn, it's like they weren't scared of the vehicles, and they wanted to be in the open, right? Like their number one defense mechanism is their eyes, and they want to be able to see what's around them, which makes sense that they are out in these open areas so they can see in all directions. So that's what we did, and we got stalks pretty much every day, and Curtis located some pronghorn while he was still hunting and stuff, and there was like a vehicle driving right through the field. It was really frustrating. There was no road. So we got a hold of Fish and Game to let them know about that, and never saw the guy again. So the more stalks that I did though throughout the days, the thing that really became apparent to me was how curious pronghorn are. Like they want to know what you are. I think it's from a safety perspective, right? Like I said, their eyes are their number one defense mechanism, so they want to be able to see like what's going on. And I never had a buck, I never got closer to a buck that just like stood up and ran. Every single time they would stand up and stare at me. And most of the time they would turn towards me and start coming and cutting the distance a little bit because they were so curious. Once I would do something like draw my bow beneath the sage and come up above the sage, that's when they would hit the gas and trot out of there. Just super, it was super interesting, man, because I'm not used to that. Like for coos deer, gosh, man, a coos deer, man, if they just smell you, they're gone. A lot of times they won't even look. They'll just like get a whiff of you, out, and they just run. Pronghorn didn't seem to be as affected by the wind. They were more concerned with being able to see the things that were around them and be able to see danger instead of smell it. So super interesting, very, very interesting, and far removed from any other animal that I've hunted. Something else that stood out to me about hunting pronghorn with a bow that I've mentioned a little bit here so far, but I was absolutely amazed by their eyesight. There were a few times where I was stalking bucks and I was like, oh, this is perfect, this is gonna work out, and then for whatever reason, probably their eyesight, they just stood up and looked at me. And I'm like, what the heck, man? Like, how did you see me? But like I said, they can see 270 degrees around them. So one time in particular, I had a buck, a lone buck, bedded, quartering away from me, and I was coming in from behind him. And I had this tall piece of sage to work, which, by the way, like every single stalk I did was either crawling on my hands and knees or belly crawling and just trying to find this, like, any taller bit of sage that I could put in between me and the buck's eyes. Okay, so I'm crawling along and I get to about 66 yards, what I know is now 66 yards. And that buck just, I had the wind, I had all of that, and the buck just stands up and looks at me. I thought it was going to be a done deal. I was going to shoot this buck in his bed. But he stands up, looks at me, I range him 66 yards. I hook my release on, and I pull my bow back beneath the sage, and then I come up, and right when I came into view, he just hit the gas and got out of there. So Along with stalks, though, like when I would see them off the road, maybe I'd see, like one time I saw 2 bucks off the side of the road, and I got out of my vehicle and they're like 700 yards away and they're already looking at me. I'm like, what? You know what I mean? So it's really hard about hunting these things is you can find them. There were areas that had a little bit more topography in them, so you could kind of use that, which is more what I'm used to, using topography to get closer to animals and stuff, using like walking the bottoms of cuts on the back sides of hills, stuff like that. But for the most part, it's flat kind of sage, and there might be some little dips here and there that you can kind of squeak in, but I quickly realized that stalking pronghorn on their feet was just like, I'm like, well, I'm just not going to do that, unless I had topography in order to do it. So what I really started doing was I really just started glassing for prongs sticking up above the sage. And that's how I would make my play. I would just look for bucks bedded. And once I found a buck bedded, I knew, okay, I know I've at least got a little bit of time, and hopefully I could cut the distance sooner than later. But a lot of these were just me crawling for an hour and a half, trying to get into range of these bucks. And when they had does, you know how that goes. A lot of times I got busted by does. So like the ideal situation to me was finding a buck bedded alone and putting the moves on them like that. I did end up missing a few pronghorn throughout the week, and they were heartbreakers, man. But underneath what I'm about to tell you, there was a really valuable lesson. So the first one was it was a poke. It was nothing I've never done before successfully, but it was a poke. So like right when my hinge was about to break, the buck jutted to the right. Clean miss. Okay, so I was like, okay, whatever, clean miss. He moved. The second one, the buck was 67 yards quartering away. Okay, and so he's quartering away. I'm drawn back thinking about the pronghorn steaks I'm going to eat after this. And I shoot, and he like jets to the right. So with that one, I was like, oh, he matrixed my arrow. That's why I missed. The third one, though, is what really threw me for a loop. And that one, the buck was 73 yards, dang near broadside, and I ended up missing wide left. At that point, I was like, okay, like something is wrong. Now, before you guys start leaving comments and stuff like that, all right, I checked my bow right when I got to camp in the daylight. Okay, I got to camp at night, checked my bow the next morning, all right, to make sure everything was good. I shot broadheads out to 73 yards, and I was dead center. Okay, so after going and checking again after missing that third buck, I was suddenly 1 foot to the left at 60 yards, which like at some point, guys, I don't know exactly what happened, okay? At some point between me checking in the beginning of the hunt and then checking after that third buck, something moved. What I later found out was that I got string stretch. And all the signs of it, when your string stretches, everything moves. Your cam timing can change. Your knock height changes. Your poundage can change. Okay, I lost poundage for sure. So the bow went out of tune, and I honestly, this is my bad. Okay, on my part, I got this bow back in the springtime, and I honestly didn't think that it was any string stretch was going to happen, because it hadn't happened until now in the fall, and I've shot the bow a lot. But these are things that you gotta keep track of, right? That's the lesson for me here, is I should have made sure everything was in spec before I left, instead of just shooting my bow a whole bunch and trying to get it as accurate as I could. And if you remember the video I recorded before I left, my bow was suddenly went out of tune. Okay, and I fixed it on camera. I fixed it there. I got it back in tune. But that right there should have been sign enough for me to be like, oh, I wonder if I'm experiencing some string stretch here. But you know what? I didn't, and it's my bad, and I'm eating my tag because of it. Okay, so going forward, I think I'm going to have a much more diligent protocol on any like new bow that I get, to be a lot more diligent about checking for things like string stretch, which I've experienced this in the past, guys, but a lot of times it happens sooner. It happens within, a few hundred shots. It doesn't normally happen later. So the reason I think it happened later was because of the temperature difference was way different than Arizona. Okay, I was going from 100 plus degrees to one morning it was 29 degrees. Okay. And the other thing, there was a lot of moisture in the air too. Some of the mornings there was fog. There was rain on and off. My bow was getting wet and drying and just doing that whole thing. Those things are the only reasons why I can think that the string stretch kind of was escalated. Obviously it was already something was already happening before I left, and I should have checked it. I should have done that, man. It's a hard pill to swallow, but you know what, man? I'm not perfect, and you live and learn. That was largely my hunt, guys, and it turned into mostly a spot and stock hunt because I need to get a new chair for my blind. If you have any recommendations for a good chair for a hunting blind, drop them down below, because the one that I have absolutely wrecked my back, and I just couldn't do it anymore. Like I love sitting in the blind. I love sitting in a tree. Like I said, I have the patience to do that, but man, the chair that I had was just tearing me up. And I just couldn't do it anymore. So it just turned into mostly a spot and stock hunt for me. And in doing so, I realized how valuable having something like Onyx was, because I was hunting around a lot of private ground. So having these boundaries on my phone, if I didn't have that, oh my gosh, I may not have gotten some of the opportunities that I did, because in some cases there would be like a buck bedded on public, but he's kind of surrounded by private. So I'd have to like figure out, okay, like a route that I could take to avoid going on the private to get around to where the buck was on public. And some of the private ground was really frustrating. Was some of it wasn't fenced off. It was just open. So there's like no sign there that says you can't hunt there. But when you look at the map, it actually is private. So if I would have went and tried to shoot a buck on there and maybe shot a buck on that, I wouldn't even know I was on private, and I could just get freaking nailed by either the landowner or somebody. I don't know. So anyways, yeah, if you're hunting around a lot of private, like the Onyx was like an absolute no-brainer to have. So by the time I got the whole bow thing figured out, guys, I was stacking broadheads and field tips in camp, dead center, 90 yards. I had one more morning left. I woke up that following morning, went to bed that night, like super confident, being like, oh, if I get another opportunity this morning, this buck's going in the cooler. And woke up and it was super dense fog. Could see about 50 yards. I hung out for about an hour and a half waiting for the fog to lift, and it never did. I never got another opportunity to hunt. At least hunt the way I wanted to. I guess I could have just drove around in the fog, but you couldn't see anything. So decided it was time to pack up and head back to the desert and get ready for the next hunt. So that's what I did. And the whole drive home, I was just stewing in all the events that happened throughout the week, all the laughs. I had a great time with Curtis. Had such a fun time bow hunting these pronghorn guys. It is. I think it's probably my favorite thing to do in September now. Okay, like crawling through the sage, looking at prongs sticking up above the sagebrush. Just absolutely awesome, man, and I can't wait to do it again. Next year, I'm definitely going to have an Ultimate Predator decoy on my bow, a grunt tube, and then also knee pads. I think my knees got freaking all banged up from crawling around the sage, but that decoy and the grunt tube, like, they're rutting during the time I was there, so I think that would really help you know, increase the curiosity even more and have a buck come even closer, potentially, you know, even into bow range with that stuff. So that was my hunt. I want to know what you've got going on though. Okay, so down in the comments, let's hear it. What hunts have you done so far? What do you got coming up? Have you been successful yet? I want to know how your season's going so far. I'm leaving in about 3 weeks for rifle backcountry mule deer hunt. Super stoked. Can't wait to share that with you guys. And then it's back to the desert for me. And I'm going to be chasing late season bulls with my bow and my brother and good buddy Brian. We're going to share elk camp, and it's going to be an absolute blast. So if you liked the video, please hit thumbs up. If you like the channel, please hit subscribe. And I'm going to see you in the next video.